Hello, hello. Welcome back to La Colisión. I'm Esmeralda Santos and I'm with the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice. And we have some amazing guests with us today. To my right, I have our Executive Director, Executive Director for the Inland Coalition for Immigrant Justice, Javier Hernandez. And farther to my right, we have also Executive Director Emilio Amaya for the San Bernardino Community Service Center and co-founder for the IC4IJ. So today we'll be talking a little bit about the history of ICIJ and how you can get involved. But before we get to that, I want my two guests to please introduce themselves.
Yeah, hello everyone. Javier, he, him pronouns, executive director with ICIJ for the last 8 years. I'm really excited to be here to be part of this podcast. ¿Can Emilio?
Sí, yo soy Emilio Amaya, del director ejecutorio del Centro de Servicios Comunitarios de San Bernardino. And I'm also really happy to be here. I think this is a very important, you know, event for me, at least, to share some of this information, some of these histories with ICIJ.
Thank you, Emilio. Thank you, Javier. And I'm really excited for this episode. I've only been with ICIJ for about a year and 4 months now, but I feel like I have so much to learn from both of you. So I want to ask you both, what's your favorite memory with ICIJ?
Yeah, so I'll get started if it's okay, Emilio. I think for me, I don't know if there's just many favorite memories, but one that I remember was my introduction to the coalition in 2011. So Emilio, we were with the IIYC. We were gonna have a civil disobedience action, and we reached out for support for legal observers. And then you all showed up. The coalition showed up to support that action. Remember, it was in front of the ICE station here in San Bernardino, the ICE office, and then right after that, it was at the city hall, which you were not aware about that.
That's right.
But
Well, we knew, but then the other people didn't know, and the
Yeah.
police actually
the
didn't
police,
know about
yeah.
it.
And so it was just great to that from the very beginning, it was like this was something new, something that we had not done before in the Inland Empire. But the coalition, and folks like you and other attorneys were just very willing to support us, right? Support the youth at that time when I was younger, support the youth and really advocating for what we believed in. And we were advocating to end 287G in secure communities. That's
Sure.
what we were really fighting for that. So that was my first memory of like meeting Emilio and others from the coalition.
Yeah, and on that occasion, I remember that we were having discussions on whether it was proper to support civil disobedience. But then the conclusion one is that they're leading. That's what they want to do. We're there to support. That's the idea of having the coalition. It's not that we're gonna be, saying what people need to do. And so I think, yeah, it was a great moment. Yeah, for me, there's a bunch of them, but I remember back in 2008 when we were trying to get the coalition going. There was this raid at a bakery in Palm Springs in which 51 people got arrested. And then, but then, through the network, through the work that we're doing through the coalition, Comité Latino actually learned about, a raid was happening because they said, there was a bunch of ICE people convening at a hotel in Palm Springs, so something is going on. So I remember Mario calling me and they said something is going to happen. And the only place they can actually go after is the bakery that is in they knew the location. So yeah, the next day in the morning, around 7 in the morning, a bunch of ICE officers showed up, to arrest people there without documents. But the good thing about it is that we were already coordinating. So as the raid was happening, Mario and Comité Latino from Coachella were out there protesting the raid. And then what is it? The diocese with Petra Alexander were already working on where we're going to get resources to support these families, in which the, parents are going to be arrested. And then my organization was working with the Mexican consulate and talking to the ICE officials here at the local ICE office, to see if we can get people released without actually paying bail, because it was the beginning of prosecutorial discretion under the Obama administration. So at the end, we actually end up getting around 40 people released with the bracelet under the ISAT program. So we actually prevented like 40 people from being, removed to Mexico. So that was one of the very inspiring moments for me, in the coalition, because it really showed that, we can do a lot together. It wasn't really intentional. It was like we need to do something, but it was really funny that Mario was able to learn about this happening just from the same community, because it was actually workers at the hotel. They were saying there's a bunch of ICE officers here. Something is going on. So yeah, that was a obviously, there's a lot of good memories with the coalition that I think it would take me hours to be,
Yeah.
sharing some of those moments.
I think it's also important to acknowledge people like Mario, right? Mario is no longer. He passed away in 2020, I believe, early 2020. He had cancer, and but he was a big supporter of the work that we did. They were part of this coalition, and they were out in the Coachella Valley, and being so separate, right? Like we're talking about an hour and a half to 2 hour drive to actually get to support them. They really helped, a lot of the work out there in the Coachella Valley. So remembering people like Mario, like Aide, Father Guillen, right? Folks that have been, so instrumental in this coalition, and they're no longer with us. But I think they, for me, getting to know some of these folks, is the inspiration to continue doing this
Sure.
work.
And then the other thing is the historical context, because we are here, but we're just the result of others people work. Other people have been working to get us to this point, and just like Mario, I remember working around the issues with. ¿Cómo se llama? The immigration reform of 1986,
Herca?
working in the Coachella Valley with Mario and other people. But then Mario actually was coming from the students movement in 1968 in Mexico City. He was a participant. So actually I think it shows behind this work that we do at ICIJ, there's actually not only people but also a historical context in which different movements interact and it's very interesting.
Thank you both for sharing. I feel like both of your experiences and these stories really highlight how powerful IC4IJ is, banding together when there's the need for support. So I have another question, that is, why are you involved with this movement and how'd you get started?
I think it's just out of the need to do something. I mean, I'm myself an immigrant. I actually came to this country when I was 14, and a company with no family. Actually, I didn't have any family here, so I didn't have anybody to help me. So actually, I ended up homeless, and then my first job was actually as a farm worker, and then I was one of the first day laborers in the San Bernardino. So it's just having to find ways to help myself and to help other people. And I think that's something that our community has to understand. That it's not just about us, but it's also about other people, okay? And I think that's the whole idea of having the coalition. But for me, it was just coming from that experience of not having documents, not being able to go to school because I didn't have anybody that could, get me enrolled, not having access to, not having something to eat for days. For me, that was like the main reason I got involved in, I remember being a farm worker and then also participating in some of the marches to get immigration reform in 1986, and finally being able to get it and help a couple million people get documents. So for me, that was like I've been doing this since I was like 17 years, probably 16 years old, and most of the time has been as a volunteer. I have done everything. I have been a welder, food worker, union representative as a shop steward with the Teamsters, a farm worker. I mean, what we immigrants go through basically. And finally, we're able to get resources. So now I can be paid to do what I like to do, which is great. I mean, this is great. But yeah, that's the reason I actually, got involved. I got removed, well, not removed, but I got arrested by back in those days, Border Patrol, INS, I probably like 10 times or more. So I know about the experience of being in this country without documents and having a hard time. So I think that's the main reason why I do what I do.
Yeah, I think for me it's similar. Sorry, for me similar to like other folks. We have lived experience, right? As undocumented immigrants, I myself grew up undocumented. My family migrated to the U.S. in 1989. I was just 6 months old at the time, and so I grew up undocumented for most of my life. And one of the growing up as undocumented in the Inland Empire was I think it's its own experience, right? As opposed to like in Los Angeles or other big cities. And so living through, constant racism here in the IE, and also just lack of resources, right? Really, that's why when I basically wanted to get involved, my inspiration was the fact that when I wanted resources, I couldn't find them. When I knew family members that needed resources, they couldn't find them, and a lot of it is, well, we need to build something so that folks can find those resources in our community, and knowing that what this work is also honoring the work that came before us, but also it's to set up the work that's coming after us, and so knowing that being in the coalition, learning about San Bernardino Community Services Center and many other amazing organizations that have been here for a long time, but that really need more resources. That's been my work at ICIJ, and it's been I've been really honored to be able to be at this coalition and ensuring that we're all growing, that we're getting the resources necessary so that our organizations and our partners are able to reach more community members here in the IE. So it was a personal, right? I was undocumented. My father was deported, but and then I wanted to ensure that people had resources in the IE, and what better way to do that than to build those resources alongside organizations like San Bernardino Community Services Center and many others.
Well, and I want to say how inspirational I feel like hearing from both of your stories. I myself, I'm not undocumented, but my parents are undocumented, and I come from a mixed status family, and I feel like with our background, we didn't know that there was spaces we could plug into for support. We didn't know we could take agency to like support ourselves in our community. So I feel like I'm learning so much, and I just think like, wow, like I thank you for like I'm learning. But so I want to ask a little bit about ICIJ before it was ICIJ. So I know that's a little bit more you, Emilio. So I know before it used to be Justice for Immigrants Coalition in Southern California. So I'm interested in learning why was it that, and why is it now Inland Coalition, or just
Sure.
any little history.
Yeah, the initial convening for the coalition was actually done by the diocese through Marco Raposo, Pedro Alexander, and actually with the support of Bishop Del Riego. And then the diocese had their own department that used to deal with immigration issues, and they call it the Justice for Immigrant. That was their that's how they called their either department or. And so when they did the initial convening, we started using the same name. And so for many years, it was the Justice for Immigrants Coalition that, working with the support of the diocese, they were very important. And they were the only ones with actually resources to convene people and get people together and a place to actually meet. We actually didn't have any space for that. And then, but then when we formally decided to become a coalition, because for a long time it was just like a very informal coalition with we didn't have any funding, we didn't have any resources. It was just volunteers. But I think when we finally got to the point in which we were going to be able to get resources and get some grants and money, then we decided that it was time to actually get a new name that would be more representative of who we actually are. And we also wanted to make a difference between the diocese and the coalition. And I think that was basically the reason why we ended up using a different name.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about what was going on during that time? What was happening in the area?
Yeah, one of the issues that we always had is that for immigrants, the Inland Empire is like a border region, even though we're not at the border. Mm-hmm. And that's because we have to deal with ICE, we have to deal with Border Patrol, we have to deal with cities, municipalities that are very anti-immigrant. I mean, it is still happening. Mm-hmm. We were having those issues back in the 90s and, in 2000, we're still having some of those issues. So the main reason why we came together is because of heavy enforcement in the area and the need to do something. And obviously, there were already some of the legal organizations providing different services, but nobody was actually doing anything to stop deportation. So and that was like the main reason we decided to come together and work together, because we needed to not only respond to enforcement, immigration enforcement, and police enforcement, because back in 2010, the Riverside Police Department was actually working with CBP to get day laborers arrested. I mean, just a few years ago. And, San Bernardino used to do the same thing. So I think we needed to create resources to actually help our community and find ways to actually help our families. That was, but the main reason why, and what was happening a lot was a lot of immigration enforcement, local immigration enforcement.
And Javier, do you mind telling us a little bit about how it shifted and where we're at now and what kind of work we're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, we continue to do a lot of the rapid response work when necessary. The laws in California have changed. Also, enforcement at the federal level has changed a lot as well, where their enforcement is more focused at the border. And so we're not really seeing a lot of since COVID, and all these different things, we haven't seen a lot of enforcement in community. But we continue to ensure that we're able to do the rapid response when it's needed, right? So that's something that we always have that commitment because that's what we were founded for, right? To ensure that communities had a resource when they needed them the most, right? So we that's gonna always be a commitment of ICIJ. But I think over the years, one thing that as we grew our capacity, right? So when I started working at ICIJ in 2015, it was just 2 full-time staff, and we were a small team. We were tasked with doing a lot of work, convening, and ensuring that we were pushing state policy. But now we're 16 staff, right? Like 16 staff here with us. And so the work has maybe evolved a little bit more, where we're doing policy advocacy, we're doing organizing at the local level. We're doing advocacy at the national level, like around the Strength Adelanto Coalition. We're also doing sometimes direct services when it makes sense. So like during COVID, we're doing direct funding for giving direct financial assistance to families that were excluded from resources during COVID, like unemployment. And so we've evolved to a coalition where we're able to do a little bit more, but our essence of who we are needs continues to be the same, which is we are convening organizations so that we can collectively advocate to improve the lives of immigrants and to advance immigrant justice in the IE. But over the years, again, we've had amazing victories like Health for All. We've won.
Funding for legal services.
Funding for legal services. Yeah, support for street vendors as well. And then now we're even thinking not new, but this, where the immigrant rights movement is heading is in California specifically is on economic justice, right? So that's, I think, the next step for Californians is we do have protections for immigrants. Immigrants have, access to healthcare now. We're fighting for safety net programs, but then also how do we ensure that immigrants that live in California can thrive in California? And so right now, that's part of the street vendor work and the economic justice work that we're doing. Yeah.
And I think a lot of that credit has to actually be given to Javier, because I think has always been a dreamer, and he continues to to be a dreamer. But I think we wouldn't be here without people like Javier, and that's because not only they had the background and know what the needs are, but they also had the skills that we don't have. I mean, I don't even have a high school diploma. I didn't have a chance to get one. And if you notice, I mean, my English is not really. I didn't have a chance to learn. I didn't have a chance to go to school, and so for us, it's difficult to do things that you guys can do. And so that's, I mean, for me myself, the coalition, the way it is now, is a dream come true for me. And because having 60 people working on issues that affects the benefits of our community, it's just so amazing. And then I think one of the main differences is that we actually became proactive, because back in the days we're just reacting to things happening in the community, but now with the new resources, we actually can be proactive. And but again, a lot of that credit goes to you guys, to ICIJ's team, to everybody that is working here, but especially to people like Javier, that have this ability not only to dream, but actually to make it a reality. So yeah, I think, we're getting ready for the next generation to take over. And I know that's going to happen. We have no choice.
And I will say, like, for me, like, yeah, like, I've been doing a lot of work, but for me, it's only this work is only possible because of the work of Emilio, the work of Raso, the work of Petra Alexander, the work of folks that came before me, and laid a foundation for us, because if they had not done anything, then we would be laying the foundation right now, and folks would be building upon that. But I did take a lot of direction and a lot of inspiration from folks like Emilio, again, like Blanca, right? Folks within our board that have been in this country, their whole life, fighting for justice. And my role, the way that I saw my role was obviously I am part of this group that's fighting for justice, but the biggest task was bring resources to this region because we are in desperate need of resources in order for our organizations to be able to thrive. And I took that very serious. And we're in a better place as a region, sure, but we have a lot more work to do. Sure. And we know that and we understand that. And it's not about having the resources. The reason why we need resources is so that we can reach more people and that we're able to provide services to folks and that we don't have to turn people away. And that's that's the point of bringing more resources to this region that has been forgotten and underserved for so long.
Yes.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. Wow. I want to ask you, Emilio. I know now you're not with ICIJ. You're a partner with us now, and you're with San Bernardino Community Service Center. I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about what your org does, and I want to tell me a little more.
We provide legal services, most of the different immigration legal services. Actually, the reason we got organized was because of trying to defend our people. And our people, families were being separated and nobody was doing anything. And then we actually had organizations do Know Your Rights presentations. But the problem is that people know about their rights. The problem is that they don't have the resources to do anything about it. So it's like, I know I can request a hearing, but then I'm going to be detained, and then who's going to pay for my bail? Who's going to, take care of my family? So that's one of the reasons we actually came together and decide to, to do actually deportation defense. And so for many years, our team, which is most of us non-immigrants, people without any educational background, without, formal training, trying to defend and represent our people. And, we took advantage of the accreditation process that exists through the Department of Justice that allows non-attorneys to actually represent people in deportation proceedings. And then using that accreditation is that we were able to go to the localized office, get people arrested, represent people at the Adelanto detention facility, represent people at the Los Angeles Immigration Court. But we basically provide immigration services with an emphasis on removal defense, deportation defense. We help people with most of their immigration cases, from becoming a legal resident through adjustment, EU visas, T visas, VAWAs, DACA renewal, citizenship, and all of that. And we also grew from being 3 or 4 people to now we had also 16 people working in our team. So yeah, we went a long way.
Wow, thank you. And so you said this was called DOJ, right?
It's known as the Department of Justice accreditation, and it allows people that get trained to actually represent people in deportation removal proceedings and actually in any immigration process.
Wow,
yes.
Awesome. And this is because, in federal like cases, folks receive a public defender, right?
Yes.
But in ICE proceedings, folks don't.
No, because it's actually an administrative, it's a civil process in which it's not criminal proceedings. So people don't have the right to get a public defender. So that's one of the main issues with immigration is that as people are going through this process, this is something that we're seeing now with asylum seekers that, unless they had money and resources, they don't have anybody to actually represent them. And so, but one of the things that we learn is that we can do that as community once we get educated. And I'm like, if we were able to do it, people can also do it. It's just that they need to get the right info. They get to get the proper tools to actually help themselves.
So thank you. Oh.
Can I add just a couple of things about the commitment, right, of the organizations like San Bernardino Community Service and others? But San Bernardino Community Services Center, for many years, the way they kept their door open was through through doing fireworks sales in the city of Rialto, I believe, right? Yeah, Fontana, yeah. And so that was one of your biggest fundraisers every year, right? Like, yeah, that was the only one. And so that was the commitment, right, of these organizations to, even though this work is difficult. This work is not easy. There wasn't a lot of funding out there. There still isn't enough funding for all the work that we're doing. But for a long time, the only funding source that San Bernardino Community Services Center had was selling fireworks, which meant a 24-hour operation for about 2 or 3 weeks. Correct?
That's right.
Yeah, and so it was like this is a commitment that folks have to this work. And then another interesting thing about the work, yeah, since Emilio's here, right, I just want to highlight some of his work is you probably, in the Inland Empire, folks know Emilio, very, recognized. There's people that, hundreds, maybe even thousands of people that have gone through the legal services provided at San Bernardino Community Services Center and are now U.S. Residents or U.S. citizens. And I was one of them. I had DACA, and then Emilio, I had to do advanced parole to visit my father. So Emilio and I went to the office. I got advanced parole. I did my adjustment of status 2 years later, I believe it was, 3 years later, and then my citizenship as well with San Bernardino Community Services Center. So, I'm one of those folks that definitely benefited, right, from being able to have access to these services. And what we want, again, is that everyone that has a need for these services should be able to receive these services so that folks, number one, so our community can thrive, and number two, so that people are protected from deportation.
So, for folks that are listening and are super interested in the work that's going on in both with San Bernardino and with IC4IJ, how do folks get involved? Is there anything we can do to support?
Sure. Si alguien nos quiere apoyar, siempre pueden encontrar información en nuestras páginas del Face, en redes sociales. Nos pueden llamar a la oficina al 909 al 885-1992. Hay oportunidades para poder ser voluntario. So there's a lot of ways to help. When it comes to like trying to participate in organizing, we always tell people that ICIJ is like the best way to do it because, you have different opportunities for people to participate. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have in our community. How do we ensure that our community, continues to get engaged? Because they do when there's a need, but then they forget about it. I think one of the big challenges that we have is that we have to remember that unless we do something, nobody else is going to do it for us. And un reto para nuestros hermanos, principalmente los inmigrantes recientes, las personas que llegan recientemente, es que hay necesidad de entender que no siempre ha sido como parece que es ahorita. O sea, ha habido una historia de discriminación, racismo. Hay veces la gente llega y yo los miro en la calle con el radio a todo volumen, ahí con los Tigres del Norte, ¿verdad? O pueden ir a un parque, pueden agarrar una licencia, pueden poner un puesto de taquitos y pues sí, les dan carrilla, pero o sea, se puede hacer, ¿no? Pero hay que entender que por muchos años no podíamos hacer eso, que ha tomado la lucha de mucha gente para que haya cambios, ¿verdad? Entonces, es bien importante para nuestros hermanos de la comunidad que nos escuchen, que nos involucremos de diferentes maneras, ya sea a través de las organizaciones miembros de ICIJ o directamente con ICIJ, que por cierto tiene una membresía, así que si quiere apoyar con este trabajo, hágase miembro de ICIJ. If you really, like to support the work that ICIJ is doing, become a member. That's like the best way to do it.
Is there anything you'd like to add, Javier?
Yeah, no, thank you, Emilio, for that. Yeah, definitely become a member. And then for ICIJ, you can always visit our website and our social media as well. We're going to be posting the links in the description. And one of the other exciting things that this year, we're actually celebrating our quinceañera. Yeah, our 15-year anniversary as ICIJ. And, there was folks like Emilio again, Petra, Alexander, Tom Dolan,
Marco Raposo.
Folks that said, that basically had a vision. They sat down and said, one day we're going to have a coalition that does X, Y, and Z. And they sat down and they were just volunteering and ensuring that they were sharing resources. Well, that was 15 years ago, and now we're here in a very different place. And we still have a lot more to grow, but we're so excited that we're celebrating our 15-year anniversary, our quinceañera. So, folks, if you can go to our website, you can go to our social media, and you'll find more information about that. We want to have a big event that's going to take place in September, and everyone's welcome to join, so that we welcome to join, so that we can celebrate together. Yeah, and we just celebrated May Day, the March for Immigrant Rights here in the Inland Empire as well. So there's always events that we have. There's always opportunities to volunteer. We have events constantly. We're doing outreach. So we just, ask folks to follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, check out our website, and, send us an email if you want to volunteer. You'll find all that information in our website.
So yeah, I'm gonna repeat what Javier said. Come to our gala. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Come get dressed, look good, spend some time with some good people, and it's gonna be a lot of fun. So please come and join us. But if you're interested in following our social medias will be included in the notes below. And thank you again to our amazing guests, Emilio and Javier. And join us for our next episode for La Colisión. Thank you.
Well, yeah, before we close, sorry, I think just want to give a shout out to the team at IC4IJ or ICIJ. There's so much work that we do day to day, and sometimes folks, like Emilio said, take some of this work for granted, but we wouldn't have Health for All if it wasn't for you all. We wouldn't have safety net. We wouldn't be fighting for a safety net if it wasn't for all the organizers that are doing this work. We wouldn't be fighting for street vendors if it wasn't for folks, at the ground, talking to vendors every day. So, thank you to the ICIJ team for all your commitment to this work. We know it's not easy. I've been in this for 15 years. Emilio has been in this for a little bit more, 16 years, 17 years. And it's like, we know that this is difficult work, and it takes passion to this work. So thank you all the, folks here at ICIJ, all the folks at San Bernardino Community Services Center, and all the other organizers that are part of our coalition. Thank you all for all the work that you do, because we are creating a more just inland empire, and that's because of all the work of everyone. So thank you.
Y extiendo el agradecimiento. A mí los jóvenes me siguen inspirando mucho y muchas veces ni tan siquiera tienen la necesidad de estar haciendo esto, pero lo hacen con gusto, con pasión y gracias. A mí no estaríamos aquí sin ustedes. Así que gracias equipo de ICIA. Gracias a todos.
And I know y'all can see, but like our production team is back here, and yeah, a special shout out to Tamara, Daniel, and Diana.
Thank you all.
But
Good? All right.
yeah.
Gracias.